Hey everybody, it's Justin. Thank you for watching and welcome to my house. In this video, I want to show you how to get the ServiceNow SDK, that's the ServiceNow Software Development Kit, up and running on macOS. This is going to be fun. I've done this on my laptop to make sure before I recorded this on my desktop that it actually worked. But if you're not familiar, the ServiceNow SDK is something relatively new. I think it came out in Washington, D.C. You can see the doc site here up on my screen. Everything you need to know really is contained in this doc site, but I'm going to have a little couple gotchas as I go through this that I found out that I'm going to share with you that are not included here in the documentation. So this is kind of OS agnostic, but is specific to things like Visual Studio Code, NPM, and what's the other one? There's Node.js, NPM, and another one. So there's going to be stuff like that that's consistent across platforms, but for my purposes, I'm in macOS, and the first thing I want to do is make sure that I have my development tools installed, or my command line developer tools installed on macOS. So if you open the terminal window, I'm just going to search for terminal. Let's go ahead and minimize. Actually, I'll just leave this up. We're going to focus on this terminal window, and I'll just zoom in and post. And what I want to see is, do I have the command line tools installed? Because I noticed when I was doing this that there wasn't the command line tools installed, and it just kind of prompted me automatically when I was trying to do everything, which I felt weird. Like, I'd rather have this installed before I start, and I'm not seeing it right now. So xcode-select-p is it's asking me to sudo that. So let's go ahead and sudo xcode-select-p, and I'm expecting an error here because I know these aren't installed. And of course it wants my password, and I have to do that without talking because I always do that without talking. Okay, so it's unable to retrieve. I didn't need to sudo that, so that's fine. Let's clear that out, and I'll just go back up, and this is what the command was, xcode select-p. So I don't have it. So I need to install that, so I'm just going to do xcode-select. Xcode is Apple's development software. Like if you were going to develop an iOS app or something like that. I've got caps lock on. So let's go ahead and install that. It's going to bring up something that is right here. So the Xcode select command requires the command line developer tools, which is what you want to use with Visual Studio Code and all of this. So I'm going to go ahead and install that. I'm going to have to agree to it, and then it's going to go download the software and install it for me. I hope it doesn't take 26 hours, but I won't make you sit here and watch for 26 hours. We'll remove that in post so you don't have to watch it. All right, for the record, that didn't take 26 hours, but what I'll do in post is I'll speed it up and put over here how long it actually took, but we are done there. So let's go ahead and run that command again just to see what we were expecting. There's my command line tools, they're installed. I'm done in terminal. We're gonna use terminal later, but we're gonna use it within Visual Studio Code. So our next step is to download Visual Studio Code, if I can spell it. Visual Studio Code. Let's go to the download one, and for Mac, Linux, and Windows, and I want for Mac OS, so I'm just going to click download there. It will download. That might take a second. All right, that finished downloading, so here's my Finder window. We'll just go ahead and double click on that and get rid of that, and it is going to go ahead and install Visual Studio Code for us. Actually, I don't know where it went. Where'd it go? Oh, actually, all right, so this was weird. Yeah, so it puts the application, it just unzips the application. So what you need to do is drag and drop this to your applications folder. So just drag and drop it over the applications, and then you should be done. What I want you to do though is I want you to go ahead and launch it once. We're going to close it right after we launch it. So we'll just launch it, get it started. We're going to have to click through, hey, you downloaded this from the internet. Is it safe to open? Yes, it's safe to open because I did it on purpose. And now I've got Visual Studio Code up and running. It was on my other screen, I dragged it over. So now that that's done, go ahead and close it. I'm going to just command quit. And then what I want you to do next is open up your settings. So you might not see this on the screen here. So I'm just going to go to my settings. And now you should be able to see that on your screen. Let me make sure and look over there. Yeah. So on your settings, I want you to go ahead and do that, and then settings, privacy, and security. So right over here on the left-hand side, privacy and security, we're going to look for full disk access. And what Visual Studio Code is going to do is it's going to use your hard drive to put settings and stuff somewhere. So what I found when I was doing this is I wanted to add Visual Studio Code. I can't talk while I put in my password. I don't know why. It's like in my brain. I can't talk while I'm putting in my password. I don't know what it is. But once I have that there, now I'm just going to go to my applications folder, find Visual Studio Code, and we're going to grant Visual Studio Code full disk access. This is just going to prevent all kinds of errors, and even if it isn't an error, as you're troubleshooting and stuff, you can relax and know that it's not a disk access issue if you do run into any errors that I don't cover here in the video. So full disk access is done, and now we're going to relaunch Visual Studio Code. And now I'm ready to go. So once I'm in here, now we actually need to install Node.js and npm. And so I'm going to go back to my web browser, and we're just going to search for, what do I have here, Node.js download. And it's going to bring in both of those for me. So let's see, we'll just click on this one, download. And I want the latest version, the long-term support LTS, which you can see here. Let's go get, there we go. I want the pre-built installers. Okay, so download Node.js 22.11.0, which is long-term support, or LTS. That is downloading. Let's check our Finder window and see our downloads. Let's just drag that over there. There it is, Node.js. I'm going to go ahead and double click that. We'll click continue. We'll agree to the software license agreement that nobody reads. And then I'm not going to change the install location. I'm just going to install. Here we go with my password again. All right. It's a pretty quick install, and then once we have that up and running, we're just going to make sure that that worked. There's actually our versions. I'm going to double check here in a second, but you can see there's Node.js and there's npm. You need both of these in order to use the ServiceNow SDK. So we'll go ahead and it cleaned up after itself, which is nice. And now I have that ready to go. Looks like I had this open earlier, so I'm going to go ahead and close whatever I had open. And actually what I want to do is we'll just make a folder in my download. I'm going to use my app called Justin's House. So I'm just going to call this Justin's HOUSE or dash HOUSE, Justin's House. And we're going to use that as my working folder. So let's go ahead and open that folder in Xcode, not Xcode, in Visual Studio Code. Let's go to download, Justin's House, open. And now I've got Justin's House open. This will pop up as you're opening different folders. So I'm going to go ahead and trust it. It's on my Mac. I don't care. And then I want to open a terminal window from this application. So I'm going to go ahead and just terminal, new terminal. And I want to check the versions, which is in the ServiceNow documentation. We'll check the Node version. And we should get one back here, 22.11.0, and then you can do the npm version as well. npm, I got 10.9.0. So now that you have all that stuff done, you want to do npm dash, or not dash, just npm install dash global, and then at ServiceNow /SDK, and that's going to install the ServiceNow SDK. So hit enter, and we'll cross our fingers for no errors. I wish there was a little more feedback. I don't know if this is a Visual Studio Code or preference for me on macOS, but that's all I get. And you do get some error messages around other stuff that I was permission denied. Okay, so this, I tried to get out in front of this using the full disk access, and I forgot that this continued to happen even after I gave full disk access. So the fix is really easy. All you need to do is put back in that previous command that you did. So I'll just click in here and we'll arrow up npm install, and we'll just go back to the beginning of that command line, and I want you to type in front of that sudo space. So sudo is super user in a Unix operating system, so sudo npm install, and I'm going to be prompted for my password again, and I can't talk. I have a very complicated password. And now it's going to attempt to install again. Now I get my warnings that I was expecting about deprecated packages that are part of the SDK. I don't care. ServiceNow knows what they're doing, and it'll go ahead and install the ServiceNow SDK for me. There it is. I've got it all up and running. The ServiceNow SDK is ready to go. And the next step is we want to go into extensions, and that's this one right here. We're going to search for command line, no, ServiceNow Fluent language. I think it's there at the top, so let's click on that. There it is, ServiceNow Fluent language. Click install. That's going to install in the background. You're not going to get much feedback on this one, and now it's already installed, so you don't really see anything in the terminal window or anything like that. So now that's installed. Now we are ready to go. Let's go back to our Explorer, and I'm going to close this Fluent language, and we're just going to bring the terminal window up here a bit, and I'm going to clear the window there, and then we're going to go ahead and create our authentication alias. So this is what's going to be used when we connect to your ServiceNow instance. So I'm looking on my other screen here. It's going to be now-SDK, and then we're going to do auth, and then we're going to save that to an alias I'm going to call Justin. Now this part right here, Justin, you can name anything you want. You're going to use it over and over again as you use your commands. I'm going to do -type as basic, and it's going to be my default, so I'm going to set that to true. Again, this is in the documentation. You can see where that is. I'm going to put in my instance name right there. That's going to store that, and then we're going to default to admin, and I actually don't have my admin password memorized, so I'm going to open my Bitwarden on another screen. If you don't use Bitwarden, I highly recommend it. I used to be a big fan of LastPass until they got hacked, and now I'm a fan of Bitwarden, and then we're just going to copy and paste that over, and we should be good to go there. So it stored it, and I did authenticate to the instance. You can see there on that second line, so we know it actually attempted the authentication and worked, and now we've got a good alias set up. So now the last piece is I want to convert my Justin's House application to be able to use on my desktop. So there's actually a version or a command for that, now-SDK convert x underscore, and this is my application name, 417.399-Justins underscore h. That's my scoped application name. Now yours is going to vary, whether you did it in your PDI, whether you did it in your production instance or sub-production. I'm going to call it Justin's House, and I'm going to use that authentication alias Justin that I told you before, and then you get to specify what type of project it is. I'm going with Fluent, but I think you can use JavaScript as the other one or some other one, but that's what I'm going to use, and hit enter there, and it should attempt to authenticate and grab it. Now it did not like I think I typoed. I put a dash in there instead of an underscore, so let's just go back and fix that. See, even I'm not perfect. You're going to make mistakes. Just roll with it and go back and fix your mistakes. There we go. Got the underscore. It's downloading it. And now as it downloads it, it's going to build out the file structure locally here on my desktop, so I can begin adding any JavaScript packages or editing actual code on my desktop. But the main purpose of this video was to show you the steps to get it installed. And oh, look at that, it's already there. That's right, because I did this on my laptop, so it's already been converted. All right, guys, this is a day later, and it occurred to me when I went to sleep last night that I have more than one app that I can actually download. It doesn't have to be the app that I already did on my laptop. So I'm coming back to finish the recording, and we're just going to pick another app. I have another app I use called AppMinder, and I haven't talked a lot about this application, but essentially what it does is it helps me keep the apps up to date in my PDI or any instances that I'm supporting. So once again, I'm making a folder in my downloads folder. Typically I'd make it my documents folder, but to keep things clean on the video, I'm putting it in my downloads because there's not a bunch of stuff sitting in there. And so I've got AppMinder, so we'll go over here to Visual Studio Code. We'll open up that same folder in my downloads. There's AppMinder, and then I'm going to open a new terminal window just like we did with the previous one. And I need to just convert that application using the Now SDK. So if we look behind Visual Studio Code, I have the application scope up there on my PDI for my custom application that's called AppMinder, and it's actually using that same scope prefix 417399, which actually doesn't apply to my PDI, so this should be fun. But let's go ahead and put in that command, now-SDK, and we're going to convert, and then I want to put in my scope name, so it's 417399. Again, it's up above there, AppMinder. And then the next one is we're going to give it a name, and I'll stick with my convention there of app-minder. And then my authentication is going to be my alias called Justin. And then again, my project type is going to be Fluent, like we did before. And now we should see this work successfully. Actually, I have a feeling it's not going to work, and you'll see why here in a second, but let's go ahead and let that convert. Okay. So I was expecting this because it's been 24 hours since I made a change. Now, there is this number, this scope, X417399, is actually from a PDI that's a long time ago that is gone. In fact, that PDI was, there was a bunch of issues with it, and back, a couple releases ago. So the workaround, which I actually was just in the office hours for the Now SDK team, they acknowledged it, said that my workaround is fine, but they've got a bug logged for it, so I'll leave that to them to communicate that. My workaround is I'm going to go to, let me show you the system property first. So I'm going to go to sys properties, .list. And there is a property in your instances, it doesn't apply just to PDIs, that's prefixed with SN app author. And there is a property called all company keys, which you can see here. And in my new PDI, that's 404613. Notice that's not the 417399. That's the scope of the application I'm trying to convert to an app. So I'm guessing this is a security feature, or to stop you from editing somebody else's app. So my workaround is we're going to go into scripts-background. If you haven't heard of that, you should definitely search that and check it out. We're going to change our scope to global here because we're going to update that property. And I've got it over on a sticky note on my right-hand screen, so I'm just going to copy and paste that over. And so I'll just describe here what I'm doing. I'm setting a property, so gs.setProperty. That property name, which you can see there, is the one I just showed you in the list of properties, all company keys. And what I'm adding is the key for my application that came from a different PDI, but I want to keep the key that's part of my new PDI. So it's just a string with comma separated company keys. My old key 417399, and I want to retain my new key for this PDI. Now this will disappear in 24 hours. There's some kind of job that makes this go away in 24 hours. But for the purposes of me working with the SDK and showing you guys how to do that, it's going to be there temporarily, and you can see it now in the system properties actually showing up. I did it using the background scripts because you can't edit this in the UI. It's all read-only. It's marked as a private application, and you can't edit it. So that's why I did it in the scripts background. But however, now we go back to Visual Studio Code. Let's just bring that back up here, and I'm going to arrow up and repeat the same command. And I want you to pay attention what happens over here under App Binder, and what happens here in the terminal window when I hit enter on that. So let's go ahead and hit enter. It will download the application package now. That's going to come as a zip file, and then it's going to unzip that and put my application locally on my macOS desktop for me to work with. It's actually still working through that there. It's transformed a bunch of stuff. It's copied some metadata, and it still seems to be working. But I do have a menu here now. You can see I've got, there's my source code. There's my now config, my package.json, which is important with this SDK. And let's see, error command failed, npm install -- silence. I have npm installed. What the heck? npm -v. Yeah, npm's installed. Oh, that's the command that it wants. That's strange. Let's see if I can build this now, though. Now SDK. Well, let's do this. Let's go ahead and add a file. I'm going to go in server side here. There's no files there, so I'm going to go to new file. We're going to call this justin.js, make it a JavaScript file, and I'll just put some comments in here, demo for the YouTube. But let's pretend that there's some code in there that I'm putting in my application, right? I'm going to save that, and now I have this justin.js file. So I'm just going to go ahead and build this. So now -sdk build. That should package.json not found in path. Where's my path? Oh, let me move into my appropriate directory here. All right, there's my package.json. So let's try that again. Build. That should go ahead and build it. Now we're going to deploy it. Deploy, and now to do that I've got to give it my authentication again, so my alias is Justin, and this should move that justin.js file up into my instance. In fact, before we do, I don't know what's going on with my application, but this SDK obviously does not like my application, so I have more than one application, so let's go try another one. I have, what else do I have here? Let's just get out of here. That's an old one, my Dolly spoke. That might be a good one. That's a pretty simple application, my Dolly spoke. So let's try that one. And look, there's not a lot of stuff in it too. All right, so to do that, let's go back here and we'll just switch to that scope. I do the scope switching so I can use this handy dandy feature to get to the application record, and there I can see my scope for it. So let's go ahead and close this folder in Visual Studio Code, close folder, and we'll go in Finder. We'll make another one now under Downloads, new folder, We'll just call it Dolly Spoke like that. And now in Visual Studio Code, we'll open that folder. Downloads, Dolly Spoke, open. All right, and then I can't open an integrated terminal from there. So let's go terminal, new terminal. I'm in the same folder, which is good. Now SDK convert, and then we want that scope name. Oops. X underscore 417399. You can tell I had that PDI for a while before it broke. ServiceNow migrated all the PDIs to a different data center at some point, and it broke my PDI. We'll call this Dolly Spoke with the dash, provide my alias, and specify the project type as Fluent. And hopefully that brings it down. We'll just bring this up so you can see that happen. So this has a catalog item, very, very small application, 7 items total. Yeah, very, very small application. So hopefully less errors on this one. Okay, it's done downloading. So let's go ahead and do like we did before. Let's go ahead and make a new module. We'll just call it Justin.js, and then we'll pretend like here is some awesome JavaScript code that does stuff. Actually, let's get an integrated terminal. Since I know this one I opened up weird. So now that I've got my folder here, we'll open an integrated terminal. Again, I don't know if I need to do that, but there's my packages and everything. So now SDK build. Ooh, I got one error. Property name must begin with X underscore. Fix errors and rerun fetch / build. And just for thoroughness, let's make sure, let's go into AppMinder. Nope, sorry, wrong app. Let's go into Dolly Spoke. Make sure there's no Justin file. There's not. No search results match Justin. So now I'm going to build it. Ugh! Let's fix it here. You know what? I have the SDK. So this is in source fluent generated sys properties. Source fluent sys properties C98. So it's this one right here. So let's change the name. Let's put this in here. Man, I'm really outside of my comfort zone, but I'm doing what it wants. So let's try that now. Now SDK build. So I did exactly what it asked. I just didn't go through the UI. I did it. Oh my God, it's working. All right, so it made a zip file, and now I'm going to deploy it. Deploy, provide it my credentials. It's deploying. This is good. Might actually finish this video. All right, it is deployed it to my instance. So let's go back to ServiceNow Studios, and I'm just going to hit refresh. And look at that. I've got a new ECMA script module called Justin.js. We're going to open it in ServiceNow Studio. Look at that, everybody. I did it. Here's some awesome JavaScript code stuff. So wow, I wasn't expecting that. I had an error message, and my default kind of go-to was, oh, let me go back to my instance and troubleshoot and fix it. And really all I needed to do was go into the code inside Visual Studio Code, fix the name, and it fixed it. So unexpected lesson learned there. The main point of this is I wanted to show you how to get the Now SDK on macOS with those caveats around the sudo when you're running into error messages when it won't install the Now SDK. And then the full disk access, I think, is unique to Mac. And then I didn't know you could have Visual Studio Code on a Mac, so now I know that now. And if I wanted to do anything else code-wise, I could do that now from Visual Studio Code and build it and deploy it back to my instance. You could do the same for your instances. I hope you found this video helpful. If you did, please like, please subscribe, or share it with somebody who you think might be interested in using the new ServiceNow SDK on macOS, on Windows, or whatever. And until next time, don't forget to always be learning.